So to talk a little bit more about this topic, about AI and humans at work, I'd like to invite two next speakers, Mirjam Turk and Jelle de Vries. Give them a big round of applause, everyone. There they are. Yes, you know the drill. We're going to stand here in the light. Very good. You're both from RSM, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you do at RSM?
I'm Associate Professor of Marketing.
Nice. And what about you, Jelle?
I'm an Associate Professor of Technology and Operations Management.
Yeah. Has anyone told you today that you look an awfully lot like me?
Thanks. Not yet, but still possible.
Right? Yeah. Somewhere related, yeah. So I think I'm going to give you guys the clicker. Who's going to start? Mirjam, of course. There you go. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. We have already seen today that AI is omnipresent. That the impact that it will have on our futures is profound. And clearly, the question of how AI, technology, automation will affect our jobs is very relevant to all of us. Now, to some extent, this is not at all a new question. Ever since the Industrial Revolution, technology and automation has been changing the nature of our jobs. If we look at some historical data, what we see
The big green one, yes.
What we see is that it's mostly jobs that required limited education and jobs that are considered blue-collar jobs that were most affected by technology. Yet, we have reason to believe that this time it's rather different. We already saw that the capabilities of Gen AI are extremely impressive, and it's capable of taking over jobs and tasks that were in the past never considered susceptible to automation. What we see is that it's predicted to mostly affect jobs in the office, administrative support, in other words, the so-called white-collar jobs. Now, these predictions, I think, are quite nice, are interesting. They come from experts in the field of labor economics. However, the question of which jobs are most vulnerable for automation is, of course, predominantly important to those who still need to make their career choices. Young students, young adults who are about to make their occupational choices. But they turn to adults in their surroundings, their parents, their teachers at school, to learn about career advice. They don't turn to experts in the field of labor economics. And this raised the question, what are actually the lay beliefs of people regarding which jobs are susceptible to automation? And to illustrate the origins and also the relevance of this research question, I want to take you for a minute to a place relatively close to here, the south of Rotterdam. We're almost there. A few years ago, we got in touch with people who work for the gemeente Rotterdam, and they're involved in the so-called Bridge project. And this Bridge project, an EU-funded project, has the objective of strengthening the position of young adults on the labor market, predominantly in this area of Rotterdam South, where it was observed that young adults and students are drawn to majors in the fields of administration, legal fields, where actually there are very limited jobs. Well, there's a lot of demand for labor in the sectors like the port, healthcare, and technology. So in other words, students are making occupational choices for fields where there are actually very limited jobs. A classic example could be the bank teller, a profession that was omnipresent decades ago, but has now largely disappeared from the streets. And so, in our ongoing work, we look at this question, what makes a job likely to be automated in the eyes of the people? We conducted several studies, and I want to highlight our main study. In this study, we surveyed over 3,500 people who evaluated 580 jobs. First of all, on their perceived risk of automation for that job. And then second, on the task characteristics that we know from experts in the field relate to job automation, where we know that routine jobs are more likely to be automated, but jobs that require a lot of manual, social, and analytical skills are less susceptible to automation. But importantly, we complemented this, based on our interviews with the Bridge project, with insights from the field of occupational psychology. And we also measured occupational stereotypes. A stereotype of gender, but also a stereotype of prestige, the extent to which a job is held in high social standing in society. And our results, I think, are quite interesting. We see, first of all, that lay people are actually quite aligned with expert predictions. They know that manual and social jobs are less likely to be automated, while routine jobs are more likely to be automated. But we also see that they have a strong belief that prestige relates to a job's likelihood of automation. And to zoom in on that relationship, what we see is that lay people believe that the more prestigious a job is, the less susceptible it is to automation. Now, of course, we were interested in whether this is the correct belief. And so what we did next is we looked at these prestige perceptions for these 580 jobs, but we combined them with expert predictions regarding the likelihood that each of these jobs would be automated in the future. Quite strikingly, we then get the exact opposite relationship, where we see that nowadays the jobs that are more prestigious are actually predicted to be more vulnerable for automation. And we think that this research points to two important insights. When we talk about the likelihood of job automation, it is important to also take lay people's beliefs into account. And then what we see is that there's a big discrepancy between the lay beliefs in terms of prestige and the expert predictions. And we hope that these insights will help to better equip young adults on the job market.
Thank you, Mirjam, for introducing the importance of looking at the beliefs about automation and what is actually happening in practice. You already referred to the fact that we make a distinction between what you can call blue-collar jobs, what you can call white-collar jobs. I don't know what kind of collar we are wearing. I'm wearing a white collar, you're wearing a white collar. We might call ourselves knowledge workers, whatever that may mean. But when we look at the future workforce, there's more than just knowledge workers. There's also people who do operational tasks. Sometimes in academic jargon we call those real effort tasks, without implying that the people here in the room who do knowledge work don't do any effort. But you see what I mean. We can also look at the people that actually put in the work in service, in manufacturing, in warehousing, for example. And that is what I want to shed some light on. In these industries also AI, and in many cases this is manifested physically by robots, they are coming. And well, might say they are coming, they're actually already there. They're not always welcomed with open arms, these technologies, because well, these developments go very fast, and at the same time that's also a little bit intimidating. We might perceive, or the people that have these kind of jobs might perceive that their job is going to be replaced maybe by tomorrow. So that means that there's a lot of protests against that. At the same time, when we look at the kind of jobs, well, Mirjam already referred to it, that these people are doing, we see that they're very often not directly being replaced. Let's take a look at the case in point. I mentioned it already, the warehousing industry. Well, you've probably seen warehouses. If you're in the Netherlands, if you're driving around, we have the term verdozing. It's a bit of an ugly word, but we see a lot of those boxes next to the road where there's actually people working in there, collecting stuff, often, well, in an e-commerce case, for you, that you order online, to make sure to prepare it, to ship it to your home. Many people who are maybe not so informed about what happens in a warehouse, they might think that this is all an automated process, and many warehouses are at least partially automated. It's a huge industry, warehouse automation, warehouse robotics, and it's growing very fast still in the near future as well. At the same time, there are still a lot of people working in these warehouses. For example, Amazon is claiming that robots are right now not really taking human jobs. They're arguing that technology can help freeing employees up to better deliver for our customers. I think it's good to have some healthy skepticism about what Amazon says, because they don't have the best track record of treating their people, well, you might say they have a track record of treating their people almost like robots. There are plenty of examples in the news about that. But still, their claim, you might say, holds true. In reality, we see that these robots are being implemented, in many cases not because they are replacing people, in many cases because they are able to help people do their job better or faster. When you talk about robotics with warehouse managers, in many cases also you see currently in the job market, automation is not a way to cut the cost, is in many cases simply necessary because the employees are not there. The employees are short. So in warehouses, robots are coming, but they're not taking over. Well, why is that? Partially because simply robots are not capable yet to do everything that the human employee is capable of doing. They're not flexible enough, literally speaking. I mean, flesh is more flexible than steel, but also because they're not capable of dealing with the variation in products that are typically present in a warehouse. A delicate vase might require a very different kind of grip than a book or another kind of product, or products that differ in volume or in weight. Also, warehouses have all kinds of fluctuations in demand, and typically these automated systems, they cannot really very quickly scale up or scale down the way that you can do with human temporary workers, for example. They require a lot of upfront investments that are not always easy to earn back, and it might be risky to fully depend on technology. So that means that people are still essential in these warehouses, but their role might change, and that means also that the moment that these technologies are arriving, we have to look at, well, how is their role changing? How are these technologies actually impacting the work that people are still doing? Well, this is also receiving quite some attention from politics, policymakers. Here I put the European Commission there. They proposed this Industry 5.0 framework, and maybe you think, well, 5.0, I mean, maybe you've barely heard about Industry 4.0. Yeah, in the Netherlands, actually, it took a while before Industry 4.0 really gained some traction. But in Germany, well, you might say in Germany, there's always one industry ahead of us, and it's certainly also the case here. In Germany, this is already getting some more prominence. Industry 5.0 refers to the fact that where Industry 4.0 is more about automation, smart technologies, automating more, Industry 5.0 recognizes the fact that this technology has to be implemented while taking humans into account. So, formally speaking, we have to find ways in which factory workers in real effort jobs, can operate in harmony with automation. And that means that we have to look beyond traditional outcome measures like productivity alone. We also have to look at more, well, you might call it subjective or behavioral outcome measures, such as job satisfaction or also work safety. This is not trivial because when you design a robot or when you design an algorithm, you cannot always simply come up with some assumptions about what this will mean for the person or how a person will perceive this. You actually typically have to do experimentation. You have to go into the field and look at how people respond to these kinds of technologies. So, well, this might sound all very vague, so let me come up with a concrete example of what we've been doing here. We've actually did some studies on this, and I mentioned the warehousing industry because that's an industry that I collaborate with a lot. And of course, you can do experiments in a real warehouse, but these warehouses are typically very busy, so they're not very happy to interrupt their operations for an experiment. So we actually created a warehouse lab, a sharehouse lab in Rotterdam Zuid at an MBO, a vocational college where students study to be logistics professionals in the future. And we set up a lab there that allows us to do physical experiments, real effort experiments in this warehousing domain. You see some examples of an experiment with actual warehousing racks, but also virtual reality experiments, for example. And in this context, we created an experiment where we focused on investigating what it means when you implement robots in an order picking setup. So order picking means someone has to collect products from warehouse shelves in order to send it, for example, to your house when you order something on Amazon or bol.com. And we let people do this manually. We let people do this together with a robot, but not just together with a robot, in two different configurations with this robot. So in one configuration, a person would lead the robot, and in the other configuration, the robot would lead the person. And we would stimulate these people to do their very best, so they would have to work to earn a higher reward. Well, in practice, that looks something like this. Either the person is working in front of the robot, and you might say, well, is this really a robot? Is it just a boring cart or something? Yeah, it's not an android that is walking behind you with a smiley face or something. But this is also a robot. It's a physical entity that is helping people in their job. And in this case, the person is grabbing the product and the robot is taking care of all the transportation. Well, that's exactly the same in this other case. But here the person is behind the robot. So from a mathematical perspective, from an operational perspective, you might say, well, the role of the person is not really changing. The person is only still responsible for walking to the place where the product is stored, grabbing the product and placing it on the robot. But you can already imagine that these are far from identical setups, because in terms of perception, you can imagine that it's quite a difference if you're the whole day, because this is not just a task in practice that you do for a couple of minutes. This is a task that you might do for 8 hours a day. If you're walking the whole day behind the robot or in front of a robot. So well, that sparked our curiosity about this. First of all, it's of course important to realize that no human is identical to another human, so you cannot say one is better than the other, but you can come up with some generic conclusions based on what we studied here. And what did we find? Well, we found that in fact, employees did not necessarily dislike working with this robot. So if we compared doing this task manually to doing this task together with the robot, either leading the robot or following the robot, we found that they in fact liked this. They reported higher job satisfaction, and also their self-esteem increased. Maybe because they were, I'm speculating, maybe because they were capable of doing more work in the same amount of time. At the same time, also we noticed that when the robot tends to become a bottleneck in their job, so if the robot is not really helping them anymore, but looks like impeding them, so practically speaking, if the robot is maybe a little bit too slow to catch up with their speed, then their job satisfaction tends to go down. Well, this means that, and this is probably not something surprising, but it is something that our research highlights again, when we are automating or robotizing jobs, we should really focus on implementing this technology and already taking into account that it's a person that has to work with this technology. And that means that we don't have to, or we should not optimize the automated part and treat humans as an afterthought, but that we really should jointly optimize the whole collaborative part of the task. So in practice, that means robotization at work is really taking robots and humans together into account rather than treating human employees that have to do the small remaining part of work as a robot as well. That was my message. Thanks a lot.